Do you remember your first subscriber? Yes. Your 100th or your 1000th subscriber? Chances are that you do, and we know that you'll definitely remember your 100,000th subscriber. Your fans may have found you while searching YouTube, learned about you through a friend, or maybe you showed up as a recommended video. No matter how they came to your channel, your audience stayed and their numbers increased because of you and the community that you've built. We're proud to honour your impressive milestone of reaching 100,000 subscribers with the Silver Creator Award. Congratulations. We know that you have many more stories to share with your community, and we know that your fans can't wait for you to amaze them even more with your commitment and creativity. So keep creating, keep building. We can't wait to see what you'll do next, and we're here to support you along the way. And who knows, when you reach your 1 millionth subscriber, we may just write to you and ask, do you remember your 100,000th subscriber? That's very kind. That's very sweet. Aw. It's here. We've done it. There it is. It's not very heavy. That is a silver play button. Can the Titan hold it up though? Oh yeah, the Titan can hold that up easily. It's very, very light. It's such a precarious place for it to live. Go for the 1 mil button. Does that mean we can all unsubscribe now? No, please don't. You'll kill me. Literally. I'll have a heart attack. Hello everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with, well, it's a very different kind of video today. Today we're going back to basics, we're celebrating where we've been, where we're going, and the beginning of a new edition. It's on the way, and I thought this would be probably a really good time to actually drop this video that I've had cooking away in the background since February. I just haven't had the time to put it out, but now seems as good a time as any. So today we're going to be painting up these ultramarines. We're going to be painting them up in a classic style and the simplest and quickest way possible, and we're going to get on with that in just a moment. So harken back to February, and I was heading up to the Warhammer World anniversary, store anniversary, and they asked me if I would paint up some Space Marines for a big participation game that they were doing, and they didn't want anything too flashy. It was a no frills paint job, so I gave it a no frills paint job. I just went for it the way that a lot of you asked me as to why I don't do it this way. So what we did is we primed the models in Chaos Black, and then we primed them in Macragge Blue, because it makes sense for these. It's just, they are about as plain as it's possible to get, and the colour scheme is extremely simple. It's essentially 4 or 5, possibly 6 different colours, and when you have all of it's kind of the same texture as well, you've got that hard armour and the hard gun, and you've got those kind of sort of solid leather details as well, like the belt and the holster and stuff like that. It's all, like I said, it's all exactly the same thing. So there's no cloaks here, there's no tabards, there's nothing kind of that is gonna take too much time to just do in a classic way. So that's why we did it this way. And we only used 2 contrast paints in this, just because, well, the old habits die hard, I suppose. But the one that, of course, that I'm using right now is Black Legion, and we're applying that over the top of the soft joints in the armor, and we're going to apply it over the top of the casing of the weapon, and we're going to apply it over the top of all of the leather details. So this is, as those aforementioned, gun strap, the belt, and the holster, as well as any pouches that might have been assembled to our Space Marines. Black Legion is just such a strong paint that it goes over pretty much any other colour as a contrast paint. It's kind of unique in that regard because it's so dark and it's so consistent. You can't put it over a Macragge Blue base coat or a Mephiston Red base coat or any kind of other primer base coat, it will work. So it's kind of just like, it's probably the best black paint that Games Workshop does now, just because of how versatile I think it can be over various different primers, unlike the rest of the contrast range, I would say. So the next colour is being used is Mephiston Red, and we apply that over the top of our Sergeant's helmet, and we apply it over the top of that sort of bit of rope that goes around the shoulder, and we also apply it over the top of the eye lenses of all of our other Space Marines here, other than the Sergeant, who doesn't have red eye lenses. He in fact has green eye lenses, and well, I just didn't use Caliban green. I used Dark Angel's green here just because, again, I'm a creature of habit. I just like contrast paints, okay? But so we applied that because we just need to get a dark green base coat over the top. We're not looking for it to be sort of bright or anything like that. That's what a highlight will do later on. So we can use a contrast paint for something like that in this instance. The other ones that work here would be something like Cygor Brown or Shaiish Purple or Leviathan Blue at a push. Those will all kind of work for this sort of thing. Celestian Blue as well, but most of them wouldn't work doing it that way. And because it's an Ultramarine, the next most dominant colour is going to be Retributor Armour. Second company, so that means that this goes over the top of not only the Chest Eagle, but also any other decorative features on things like guns or any kind of cross guards of weapons or stuff like that. So for example, like the combat knives or a chainsword or a power sword if we had one on these models, which we don't. But it also, because second company, we will be applying that over the top of the trim of the shoulders. And again, it's just a base paint. It goes over the top of the Macragge Blue spray. Absolutely no problem. Quite often though, it will take 2 thin coats. Just in some areas, it doesn't have to be the full model. It's usually the Chest Eagle where some of that blue pokes through, which is why you need those 2 thin coats. And then it's my favourite bone paint that isn't Skeleton Horde is Morghast Bone. It's quite a lovely kind of warm bone colour. It's better, I think, than Xandri Dust, which has got quite a lot of coolness to it. Not out of the primer can, it's very, very warm out of the primer can, but I do find that Xandri Dust is just a little bit too cold for the purposes of what I want a bone paint to look like. So Morghast Bone, I've really grown to love that one over the years. And then finally, for our last base coat of the bunch, we use Leadbelcher here, because Leadbelcher is the brighter of the two between Leadbelcher and Iron Warriors. We usually use Iron Warriors because I like cutting edge silver highlights to really kind of give it that sort of very shiny edge. But here, we're not trying to do that, really. We're trying to get a sort of more sort of balanced scheme, I would say, hence the Macragge Blue spray. And when we use Leadbelcher, it's much brighter. So when we put Nuln Oil over the top of Leadbelcher, it's not as shaded down as Iron Warriors is. Iron Warriors goes very dark with Nuln Oil. So when you then apply a highlight, it becomes this really bright highlight. But when you do it this way, it's much sort of closer. The darker part and the lighter part are much closer together in terms of the range of the brightness of colour. And then what we do is we hit Nuln Oil shade over almost every colour that isn't a warm yellow. So in this instance, that's the Retributor Armour and the Morghast Bone. So just Nuln Oil goes over the top of the blue, the black, the silver, and the red as well. Just works for all of those colours. What we do need to do though is we do need to shade the Morghast Bone and the gold, and of course we want to use a nice warm shade here, which will be Reikland Fleshshade, as you can see. So we bang that over the top of the gold, and we pot it over the top of the bone as well, just to kind of put some warmth into the recesses, really, more so than anything else, because otherwise the details look a bit flat. And that's kind of the thing that I don't love so much about painting this way, is the flatness of it. I know we use a lot of shades over the top of contrast paints when we're usually doing contrast plus, but it's just kind of really accentuates those recesses, and often just sort of change the shade or the tone of something just a little bit is why we do it in contrast plus. But here we definitely need it because we have no depth in any details unless we put it in. And there we go, Warhipster Battle Ready. Although really this is just normal Battle Ready, it's not Warhipster Battle Ready. So it's time to take them to the next level, and again, we just tried to keep this really, really simple as we went. So the thing that we always do when we're doing contrast painting anyways, because the Nuln Oil is going to be messy, is we neaten up the flat areas, and for this case it's very simple. We just use Macragge Blue normally. We don't have to glaze it or anything like that. We're not trying to retain any of that kind of contrast paint sort of the warmthness or the saturation that contrast paints give. This is just a flat Macragge Blue spray that we're just trying to return to the original brightness. So we apply a normal Macragge Blue layer, no glazing, just thinned down, roughly 1 part water to 1 part paint to get it nice and smooth, and then we just apply it over top of all the flat areas to get rid of any staining from the Nuln Oil, but also just to really separate out that sort of contrast of the dark Nuln Oil areas. Then we do the same thing on the helmet, because it's another sort of wide open focal point as well, and we just use Mephiston Red to do that. Just again relayering to re-establish the brightness and just kind of eliminate any staining that we got from the Nuln Oil. Which is something, again, we do this with contrast, but we often, like I said, we often turn it into a glaze, so we just retain more of that tone from the contrast paint. But here we don't have that. It's just the paint as it is, so we return it to the brightness that it was originally. And then it's time to highlight, and the highlights are the same as we do when we paint ultramarines in our Contrast Plus style. We use some Calgar Blue, and, well, because we don't have any contrast paints here, it's probably sensible to do every edge with this, and typically the original recipe for doing ultramarines is to use Macragge Blue, to shade it with Drakenhof Nightshade, and then to highlight it with Altdorf Blue, then Calgar Blue. But these days I think that's too much. So we just go for a Calgar Blue highlight over the top of that Macragge Blue, and then we move on, because we're not doing anything particularly fancy here. So we use some Screaming Skull to highlight the bone details, again just to give that sort of contrast between the highlighted edge, the depth that we've put in with the Reikland Fleshshade, and that slightly shaded and tinted sort of main flat section of the parchment. Then it's a little bit trickier here because we use some Moot Green, and we use that to add a little highlight to the underside of the lens, again just to brighten it up and give it a focal point when you're looking at the miniature. You can either just do a sort of a line going straight through the middle. I do find that also works, but here I tried to do just like the underside to give it like a sort of more traditional lens look. And then, because we've got red lenses on the other ones, but we do have a red helmet and a red bit of rope here, we use Fire Dragon Bright to highlight the red details, essentially. But we are going to be applying this as a highlight to the underside of the red lenses on the rest of the Ultramarines. And typically, we don't tend to do this sort of edge highlighting on gems and stuff with the contrast paints, because we get a sort of very sort of subtle shine by putting contrast paint over the top of a metallic anyway, so I find it kind of doesn't need it and it detracts from that sort of tone. But here we definitely need it, and because we're not going from grey sear or anything like that, there is not going to be any kind of poking through highlight for the black details, and them being the darkest part of the miniature, they do require a highlight to match it up with the rest of the miniature. So in this case we're using Dawnstone. If we wanted to take it a bit further, I would use Eshin Grey, then Dawnstone, and then use some Administratum Grey at the sharpest points. But this is just going to be fine to balance off against the Calgar Blue, which is quite cutting highlights on the blue armor, and this just kind of helps match it up, especially on the gun. And then it's metallic time, and we use these recipes almost every day on almost every miniature that we paint around here. We use Liberator Gold to highlight all of the gold. It's a nice highlight for gold. I do like it. Auric Armor Gold is something that you could use here instead. I just find it's a worse quality of paint. To me, I mean, I might get another pot because the one I had was really old and it didn't really work, and that's why it never really appears in videos. But it's a much older line of gold paint, whereas the Liberator Gold stuff is really, really nice. And it's not so bright that it kind of throws off the balance with that warm shading with the Reikland Fleshshade, but it's bright enough that you can really tell that it's highlighted across that Retributor Armour. And then finally, to finish things off, we use Ironbreaker. We use Ironbreaker to highlight all of the silver details, and then it's done. And it is a quick way to paint miniatures. Now, I don't usually like to do this on anything more complicated than this, and the reason being, we talked about at the top of the video, is as soon as like capes and tabards and lots of paper and all that sort of thing come into it, it then starts to slow us down. With, if we want to build up a lot of that kind of, like a tabard for example, I'm really bad at building up something like that, so it's much easier for me to just throw Skeleton Horde over it. Or like a cape, it's much easier for me to just put Bile Red over it. I prefer it much more doing it that way, in a sort of, well, for us it's more traditional, but for Warhammer painting in general it's less traditional way of painting things. But there we have it. Our Ultramarines are all finished, and I painted these in about sort of 6 hours in an afternoon, and it was surprisingly quick. But it was because we were just so mechanically getting through it, and I don't think there's just anything too revolutionary about this. It's not. This is the classic way of painting, and it really makes sense. The simpler the model, the simpler the color scheme, and I really enjoyed the process. To be fair, it wasn't something that I was dreading and hating the entire time. I did miss my contrast paints because I like using them. I like using them a lot more than I like painting in this style, because I don't have to thin things down and do too thin coats if it's not right. For example, Morghast Bone, we've talked about that a lot. But I really enjoyed painting this, and there they are, and they are finished. Now, I filmed all of that 3 months ago in February, and here we are in June, on the eve of a new edition of Warhammer 40,000, and in fact new intercessors are also on the way. And it's a very different time. I didn't realise it had taken this long for me to put this video together. So one of the things we mentioned earlier was that we were going to talk about where we've been and where we're going. And, well, we've got the painting out of the way. So I started this channel in 2019. It's coming up on the 7-year anniversary in July. July 19th. 12th or 13th. It's that week. I can't remember exactly when it is. It's not far away. But it was 7 years ago is when we started this thing. And this year we hit, as you saw at the top of the video, the 100,000 subscriber mark. So this video, firstly, took 7 years for me to do just a pure classic painting with a couple of contrast paints mixed in, but a pure classic painting video. It took 7 years for me to do that, so that's a long streak for the old Contrast Plus series to be going. And it also took 7 years to get to 100,000 subscribers, and it's been a long but very, very, very fulfilling journey with all of you guys out there. I enjoyed going back to basics for this, given as we're so far from the basics now. We've come a long way, and it's very much your achievement as much as it is mine. So thank you so much to everybody who has been with me on this journey of discovery with the Contrast Plus series, and thank you for watching this video. And a new edition of Warhammer 40,000 is on the horizon. I'm a very different place to where I was in 2019 when it comes to Warhammer 40,000. My relationship with it has been sort of on again and off again, is how I would describe it. And I miss it being on, to be honest. I love the setting. I really do. I first started Warhammer a long time ago with a metal Necron, and it came free in a magazine in White Dwarf. So 40k is the way I came in. MESBG is the reason I stayed, and 40k was the reason I returned multiple times throughout that period of my life. Obviously we drift in and out. Most people do. You're gone for a year or 6 months or 18 months or much longer periods of time you might be out of the hobby for. But for me it was always kind of, I'm out for a year, back in for a year, out for 6 months, back in for a year. And Warhammer 40,000 was always the thing that brought me back. MESBG, like I said, is the reason I was cemented within this hobby world. But Warhammer 40,000 is a very key, central part of my enjoyment of Warhammer. And it's been tough, I think, to not really engage or want to be engaged with it for an entire edition, an edition and a half. Ever since the pandemic, when we couldn't play games, I realized that a lot of my enjoyment was from playing the game, and I wasn't able to do that. So that went away, and then it became all about models. And that's where my love for AOS really ramped up. You know, Age of Sigmar's model range is just spectacular, and I'm more of a painter now than I am a player. And I really, really want to enjoy Warhammer 40,000. I really want to enjoy Warhammer 40,000 11th edition as well. And so I am excited. I am excited to see what happens with the multi-part release for Space Marines. I'm excited to see what happens with the multi-part release for Orcs. I'm excited to see what happens for the rest of the factions of Warhammer 40,000. We shall see what happens. There has been a lot of remastering of models in 10th edition, a lot of that stuff, but most of it's done now. So the future is pretty bright. It could be, at least. If they're going to start remastering models that don't need it, then I don't know if my relationship with 40k will change for another edition. But I'm optimistic that it won't. Or that it will, rather. I'm optimistic that things could be fantastic. And this is all just me. I'm not trying to pass my opinions on to any of you and trying to make you think the same way. I'm just kind of doing some group therapy right now. But I'm excited. I am. The Armageddon box isn't the reason I'm excited. A new edition of Warhammer 40,000 where we're going to see a lot of new miniatures for a lot of factions that we haven't heard from for a while. There's also potential for factions to get their expansions, because when in the previous edition, when you moved past a faction that was got a character and that was it, that's okay, right? So now it's not until the next edition that they're going to get something. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm really hoping that Drakari get a huge do-over. They absolutely deserve it. It's the oldest range now, for sure. I'm hoping that Chaos get a really good showing this time around. I'm hoping the Death Guard actually get a decent whack as well. It's been a while since we've heard from them. I mean, we got the Lord of Boxes. Can't remember his name now. We got the character when the Codex came out, and all 4 of the God Legions, well, 3 of the God Legions got a character, and 1 of the God Legions actually became a thing in the form of the Emperor's Children. But I'm excited to see that. Hope that Chaos gets some new stuff. One of the most exciting times was when the Phobos Marines came out alongside that. I'm forgetting the name of the box now, but it was the one that had the new Obliterators, the Venom Crawler, the new Chaos Marines, etc. That one was really exciting because it had the Greater Possessed and stuff in there. And I loved those miniatures. That was so cool. I'm really hoping that Chaos gets another thing like that. I would like to see Tau get some more experimental battle suits. I'd like to see the Eldar get some experimental things going on, some brand new miniatures happening on the tabletop. The Astra Militarum, we've just seen them get a couple of really good releases, but we want more. We just absolutely want more for everything for the Guards. The Imperial Agents I'd love to see get a really good glow up. Grey Knights, 100%. Just, I think of what Games Workshop is capable of making when it comes to miniatures, and you look at all of the stuff that they come out with. You think of like the Twin Lances shields with the fire burning around it. You think of stuff like even like Castellan Crow's miniature. He was really pretty. But you then think of what they are capable of sculpting, what they make now. Lamartis is a great example of a really characterful model, and then apply that to the Grey Knights range. I think that could be truly a stunning thing to behold. So there is lots of hope from me for Warhammer 40,000 on the eve of 11th edition. And I really hope that I'm excited by it. And I think that's it. Slightly confused video, I know. But the future is looking possibly very bright. The past has been incredible. Thank you again so much for being on this journey with me and subscribing and supporting and being a member of the Warhipster community. I appreciate every single one of you, and we don't get to do these things, and we don't get to make these videos if it's not for all of you. So I have a really, really, really amazing community, and I have a pretty sweet life. And it's all thanks to you guys. So let me know, what's your favourite video from the last 7 years? Let me know what you're excited for about the future of Warhammer 40,000. Or if you're not, let me know about what you're excited for in general when it comes to miniatures. Let's have an amazing next 7 years towards the next 100,000 subscribers. Or indeed, the next million. We're hoping I'm not making another celebration video like this at 1 million, because, well, I suspect it'll be a good few decades before that happens. But thank you so much for being with me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed this video. A bit of a ramble as it was, but are you excited for the Armageddon painting content? It's coming. It's not far away now. Only a matter of days. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you'd like to support me further, you absolutely can do so by heading to patreon.com/warhipster, just like all of these wonderful, amazing people have done. And alternatively, you could become a YouTube channel member by clicking on the join button below, exactly like these fabulous folks have done, scrolling up on the screen before you. There are so many of you out there that it really takes my breath away, and I cannot thank you enough for everything you do, as without you I wouldn't be able to keep making these Contrast Plus videos. And if you really like this video and you want to send me a little thanks, just click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.